Hi everyone, it's Lisa with InkandInspirations.com. Thank you for joining me today, and I want to welcome you to the second in a series of 2019 Stampin' Up! Christmas cards here in July of 2019. And today we're going to be making a card using the Rustic Retreat stamp set found on page 49 of the annual catalog. Now let's take a look at what we're going to need to put this card together. I have a piece of shaded spruce cardstock, cut it 5.5 by 8.5, and I'm going to fold that matching corner to corner and get my bone folder and give it a good crease. All right, then I have a piece of the Pressed Petals Designer Series paper that's in the annual catalog. It's got these springtime beautiful flowers on the back, but I loved this wood grain and I thought it went along with the rustic look of the stamp set. So that is going to go over top. So I'm going to use some snail and get that placed on the front. Okay, all right, now I have another piece of shaded spruce, cut 3 1/4 by 4 1/4, a piece of our new watercolor paper, cut at 3 by 4, a piece of scrap of watercolor paper that I'm going to be stamping and then punching out the sentiment, and then I have a piece of our burlap ribbon with some tear and tape on the back, and I'm going to go ahead and place that over top of the wood grain paper, just about 1.5 inches from the bottom, just like that. Okay, we can set this aside, and I'm going to do some stamping and watercoloring. So I just remembered I didn't even show you the finished card. This is the card we're making, so it's got some stamping and watercoloring, and you know, I figured since it's early you would have time to do some watercoloring for your holiday cards, and maybe even if you just made a few, you could have these on hand and ready to go when it's time to send out your Christmas cards. All right, so here is the 3 by 4 piece of watercolor paper, and first I'm going to stamp the log home image, and so I'm using Jet Black StazOn because we are watercoloring, and this is a solvent ink, so there will be no smearing once we stamp it on there and it dries. Okay, I'm going to line that up on that scrap piece of grid paper, and I'm going to come down about 3/4 of an inch from the top and center it and stamp. Okay, next I'm going to take this little landscape of trees, and I went back and forth about whether I wanted it behind the cabin or in front, and I decided to go with it in front, like you're looking at this scene from a distance. And so I'm just going to come down a bit, just like this, and you can see there are some little areas that are white and that the bottom of the cabin is not finished. So I'm thinking, yeah, that's a perfect spot for that. So I'm going to stamp the trees. Okay. And now I'm going to do some watercoloring. But first I'm going to set this aside and do my punched piece first with the sentiment, because that's going to take a little bit to dry. And I think I want to add a little bit more StazOn refill to my ink pad. So just a bit of advice: when you're ordering your ink pads, order the refills while you're at it so that you have it on hand when you need it. Okay? All right, so here's sending warm Christmas wishes, and I'm going to stamp that right up here in this space. Looks good. And it's not straight, but that's okay because I'm going to be punching it out with the Timeless label punch. And so when I center the punch over top of that, I just angle that where it will be straight. I'm lining up the bottom of the edge of the punch there with the wishes, the word wishes, and I'm just going to center it up and punch. Now, I wanted a little bit of color on that, So I have several inks here that I'm using for this main image, and one of them is Cajun Craze. So that's not traditionally a Christmas color, but for this particular scene, I found that it worked just right. So I squirted some re-inker in the lid of my stamp pad, and I'm just going to pick up a little bit of that ink, and I don't want too much water. Then I'm going to take it and just give a wash over the sentiment, just like that, just to give it some color. And then I'm going to set that aside and let it dry. Okay, so now let's paint or watercolor our log cabin and our trees scene. So first, I'm going to start with soft suede, and I decided to use both soft suede for the roof and the logs. I'm just going to give the roof a little bit more intensity so that you can tell the difference, and there's a little bit of change there between the two pieces of the structure of the house. So try not to get too much water. It is a small area that I'm working with here. So if you have too much water, it will pool and kind of bleed over. So even if you have to get an old rag and get some of the water off of the tip of your brush, do that. But I guess the best way to tell you how to do this is when you're squeezing the water from the well down into the brush tip, don't do it too much, just get it wet, okay? So I'm gonna add some more here because I want the roof a little darker than the logs. So I'm going to do that. Also, if you do get too much ink or too much water, you can get a towel or a tissue and kind of dab it up. Okay, and pick up some of that excess. So I'm going to continue on with the roof here. I'm doing the underside, and then there's a part over here. Okay. And then let's do the little dormer. I'm going to pick up some more ink here. Okay, just like that. Okay, I've got that looking mostly like I want it. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of water off of that, get some more ink. And I'm going to go around the windows here. I want that a little bit darker. I'm going to come on the cabin and go ahead and do the frame around the windows. And the thing about this is that, you know, you can get as detailed as you'd like with this type of watercoloring. And I'm really taking my time with this. I probably could have I'm doing the yellow inside the windows. I probably could have done the whole window yellow and the look would have been the same. But I have a little bit of time, so I'm just having fun with it. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and do the windows. You want to take your watercolor aqua painter and squeeze water until it's clear to get all of the color out of your brush. And I've got some crushed curry ink here that I'm going to use inside the windows to give it look like there's a light on inside the log cabin. And there's more detail in there, but I'm not going to worry about that, okay? You're going to still have a really pretty look. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do the logs on the cabin. I'm taking some, you see how it's really dark and intense there? I'm going over here where it's already been mixed with water. And I'm just going to lightly color here. I have a friend here working with me today, and she is a seamstress, and she is working, and I'm having fun, and we just have so much fun when we get together. It's like a retreat. And she's trying to be so quiet over there cutting, and I want her to know she doesn't have to try to be so quiet. We cannot hear her. Okay, so there I've got my logs done. Okay, so now I want to start with I want to do the chimney here. And I went back and forth, and again, I decided on the Cajun Craze because I liked the look of it with the rest of the logs. And so I'm just going to watercolor all the way down. And best to start with less color and then add more if you need it, okay? So I'm getting a little bit of the intense color there, less diluting. You can see how dark that is, but I'm gonna go with it. I might dab some of this up, but I'm kind of liking that really dark look. Let me see. Get a clean side of my tissue and kind of dab it a bit. There we go. That looks good. All right, so now clean the brush again because we're going to switch colors. And I'm using two greens today, Shaded Spruce, which is the base of the card, and then I'm also using Garden Green and kind of mixing it up a bit. So I started off with Shaded Spruce on these trees in the background. And then I just, painted them very easily. Hope you can see this. Okay. Get some more color here and add it to the trees. Let's go over here. Okay. I'm using stays on here to stamp the images on this particular card, but also you can emboss your image, heat emboss with embossing powder, and it will be color fast, and you can watercolor that way as well. Okay, so now I've got the Shaded Spruce on there. I'm going to clean my brush and get some Garden Green, and I'm going over top of that. I'm mixing the color. Another way of doing this is mixing the colors on a separate palette. But that's not the way I designed this because it was kind of like design as you go. And I just decided to add the Garden Green over the Shaded Spruce after the fact. But you could certainly mix your colors on and I use my clear blocks as a palette a lot of the time. Okay, so that's looking good. I see where my green has kind of bled onto my logs. So I'm going to get a little bit more soft suede and come back over that just a bit. Okay, so now these trees I did in Garden Green. So I'm just gonna go ahead and color all of these. This stamp, when I stamped this one, it was not as dark as my original card. That's how I knew to re-ink before I did the sentiment, but it's still turning out just fine. Now I want those a little bit darker, so I'm getting a little more ink. And I'm kind of doing my branches free-handed to give them the shape of trees, since it's not very dark. I'm liking how that's looking now. These are looking better being more dark than light, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some Garden Green and I'm going to let's do Shaded Spruce first. I'm going to do a little bit of light Shaded Spruce and go here, and I'm probably going to mix some Garden Green. I wanted a definite a difference between the greens here of the ground or the grass and the trees here. So I'm just filling all of that in. Again, I'm using Shaded Spruce up here. It's a pretty green. It's got a lot of blue in it, so you can see the difference. Okay, I really don't want too much white space, so I'm coming back over, and the green of the trees is kind of blending in with the what I'm coloring for the ground, so that's okay. Okay, I'm gonna do that. Now for down here, I'm not gonna clean my brush, and I'm gonna use garden green all down here. Okay, so just gonna give it a good wash. I love how the colors on this watercolor paper and with these inks, it's varied. You can get different shades of green once it dries out of just the one ink color. Okay, now as I did on my first one, I decided I wanted some of the garden green up here, so I'm bringing that color up. Okay, so now I'm going to get my greens out of the way and use Balmy Blue for the sky. Okay, I'm going to clean my brush. All right, let's get Balmy Blue in here. And I'm just going to wash it over this background. See those different shades of blue that are coming from just the amount of water I'm using and the amount of the ink intensity? I'm trying to go to the edge here with my blues and around the trees. Can be a little bit darker in between here. Okay, there we go. I think that's going to work just fine. I see some white here, so I kind of touch up and fill in. And I know you're possibly thinking, I don't know that I would do all of that for my Christmas cards. Well, you know, when I make my Christmas cards, I do a few like this, a few like that. And so right now, since it's early, this would be a fine time for you to try something like this. So, and the thing with this particular stamp set, it's very versatile. It's not just for, it's not a Christmas set. It lends itself to that because it has the Christmas greeting in it. But it can be a birthday card, a thinking of you card, a card of encouragement, all from this one set. Okay, all right, there we go with that. So now I'm going to go ahead and attach it to, and that really makes it the color pop when you do the, put it on against the background. That back layer color is important. You know, you can experiment with different colors in the background, but man, it just makes all the difference. Okay, now I'm going to get my card base again, and that's going to go over top there. Now, realistically, I would be letting this dry completely, and then I would be attaching it, but I want to finish the card for you. So I'm going to guesstimate where I need this adhesive and put it down on the card front, and then apply this so I don't have to turn it over and smear it. Okay, and now we have our sentiment here. It goes right down there. I think I like the chimney a little lighter with the Cajun Craze, now that I'm looking at it and comparing it to the other one. I mean, it's still fine. The thing with watercolor is no two cards look alike, so don't try to get them exactly the same, because You know, the water and the ink have a mind of their own sometimes. Now I'm going to take my Wink of Stella, just because it is the holiday card, and give it a little bit of bling up here in the smoke. Not realistic, but fun nonetheless. Okay. Now to finish this off, I haven't done the inside of the card, but I would take a piece of Whisper White, and let's look at the stamp set. Probably what would be pretty is maybe this deer on the inside, and they have this evergreen stem that you could put here and here. Maybe the deer down at the bottom, and then you could write your message. Okay? All right, there's this second of our Christmas cards for July, Christmas in July 2019. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure you visit my website at inkandinspirations.com for more details. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll have the link to this stamp set and the supplies below the video. If you're on my blog, it will be there as well. Thank you so much. I would appreciate you shopping with me and value you as a customer. So thank you so much for considering me, and I will see you all tomorrow with the next card. Have a great day. Bye-bye.